is my deep frustration that despite one speech by Rishi Sunak on this space, the government of the day, the Conservatives, the government of today, the Labour Party, have done nothing in this area. So I've combined my trading background with my political background, and we have, if you look at the Reform UK website, we've actually published a digital assets and crypto bill, which if we win the next general election, will get put into law very, very quickly, and we will have a sensible, we will effectively bring crypto in from the cold. So my life is a combination of politics, of business, and actually, I think they work pretty well hand in glove.
I completely agree. And it's very rare that you get to, generally, when you ask a politician, what do you think about regulation? It's a safe bet to say, more regulation. That's what we need. You very rarely get to ask a politician who has the background that you do. So could we actually, I want to end with this word sovereignty that you just brought up.
Yeah.
It's a really powerful word when it comes to crypto. But can we zoom back in and talk about your long career trading commodities? What was your view around regulation then? Because there's this idea that maybe markets are a little bit too regulated, but you saw it firsthand. So just
yeah, well, I mean, when I started, you could put a brass plaque outside your front door and say commodity broker. And there were a few cowboys around. So, look, I think a degree of regulation that gives consumers confidence is what you need. I saw, by the time I left the city in 2004, I saw compliance departments getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and effectively, their job was to stop you doing business, to stop you innovating. So over-regulation is a curse. There's nobody in the Labour government with any idea of business at all. Least of all, the Chancellor. Rachel from accounts. I mean,
what do you really think, Nigel? It's so
God
tough
help
to get an
us.
opinion out of you.
Sorry, I'm rather shy. I'm very shy, I'm sorry. They haven't got a clue. They haven't got a clue. And financial services is Britain's biggest industry. And it's not all whiz kids in the City of London or Canary Wharf. It's back offices in Cardiff, in Edinburgh, in Bristol, all around the country. And it's been completely neglected by both the last government and by this government. And I want to regenerate it. I want to make London back to being a great trading centre, and that includes this space as well.
Let's talk about some specific examples here as well, because I think when it comes to regulation, people tend to approach it ideologically. You're either for regulation or you're against, but you saw so many examples. What?
Well, yeah, I mean, as I say, in '86, you could call yourself a commodity broker. Yeah. There was no exam. There was no regulation at all, other than who held the money. Yeah, I saw it go. I saw it go massively over the top. Yeah. A lot of that was because we were in the globalist European Union, which is the most heavily regulated marketplace on earth, which is why it's going down the tubes, frankly. So, yeah, I'm all for appropriate regulation, but the next British government needs to deregulate financial services, deregulate small business, deregulate entrepreneurship, and we have to get the tax burden right, because at the moment, the flight of capital, the flight of brains that is happening from this country is frankly disastrous, and that I'm also trying to address, with the idea of a Britannia card, which you can buy and come back and get tax status in this country, rather than heading off to Dubai or Milan or, all the other jurisdictions people are heading to.
So can you, because so many times I bet many people in this room sit around and wonder, hey, it would be so easy to solve these problems, right? Markets are overregulated. Why don't the politicians just allow us to do this? You have more access than anyone in this room. Take us inside what those conversations are actually like. When we're talking about something like crypto, are people excited about that? We're told that people are excited. What is it actually like on the ground?
I honestly believe that if you spoke to most people in Parliament, I'll be there this afternoon. I won't be welcome, but I'll be there this afternoon. They can't stand me. But it's good to be judged by your enemies in life. I always think that. If you had this conversation with 95% of current regulators in the House of Commons or the House of Lords, you may as well be speaking Swahili to them. They don't know anything about the space. They don't want to know anything about the space. And I'm sorry to say the same thing has gone for the Bank of England. The governor of the Bank of England has been saying repeatedly over the last few years, if you invest in crypto, you stand to lose all your money, etc. So blow me down. if I wasn't walking through the door of his office 3 weeks ago to have a meeting with him, with my colleague Richard Tice, just after he'd said the week before that there should be a limit, a derisory limit on the amount of stable coins any individual should hold. Now, I was on best behavior, I promise you. I only called him a dinosaur once. But I said, this is frankly ridiculous. You know, stable coin, they're here, they're real, it's not going away. He said it was under review, and I'm pleased to say 1 week after I went to meet the governor, 1 week after I was there, he's removed the limit on the number of stable coins an individual can hold. And I would say this to all of you in this room, in this industry. Whether you like or dislike many of the political positions that I've taken over the course of the last 3 decades is frankly irrelevant. When it comes to your industry, when it comes to growth in this industry, then I am your champion, and I do make things happen, and I do make things change, and I will go on doing so.
That's very refreshing to hear. I'm just so genuinely curious. You know, is it an ideological bent? Is it the case that many people over here want all of this to happen? What is the core?
Well, like so many things, the gap between those in charge and the real country. You know, I remember when I came out publicly saying that actually people should hold crypto as part of their portfolio, and that was in 2020. When I said, look, this is here to stay. It's a fascinating space. And I liked it because whilst I'd campaigned for national sovereignty for all those years, here is personal sovereignty. You know, you've got your own money, you're in charge. And by the way, we'll come to this in a minute, there's a big difference between digital assets and digital ID that Keir Starmer wants for us.
Can we just talk about that now, actually? Can you make that distinction between digital assets and digital identification?
Well, digital ID that the Prime Minister, our authoritarian Prime Minister, wants to bring in would basically mean that the state would be in control of everything. It would be in control of your vaccine status and decide whether you were free to leave your front door or not. You think I'm joking? We had this during the lockdowns. It would be in control of your money, and I would see it. And by the way, I did ask the Governor of the Bank of England 3 weeks ago, where are you with central bank digital currencies? And it's still a work in progress. All right? I don't want digital ID to control every piece of income and expenditure. Don't forget, I am the most famous case of being debanked in this country. They closed me down in 2023, but they'd bitten off more than I could chew because I got rid of the chief executive, which I was very, very pleased with. With digital ID, controlled by government, I mean, let's face it, it would be debanking, potentially debanking on a massive, massive scale. So I'm going to fight. And I've actually said, and I'll say it again, I'd rather go to prison than have digital ID and total state control over my life and over my money. And I mean that. I'm going to fight this, and we are going to win. All right?
Yeah. So we're kind of arriving at this idea of sovereignty. And actually, on the debanking point, I was just describing to someone off stage, actually, when I talk about debanking to people who aren't in this industry, I can hear myself sounding like a conspiracy theorist. You know, you're like, the banks, they have this plot, and they're doing this, and I hear myself, but this actually happened to you.
Well, the thing is, I mean, to admit publicly you've been debanked is a humiliation. It's shameful. It probably will damage how your family think about you, how your business partners will think about you. It may well affect your future credit rating. So people who have been debanked tend not to say so. And when I got the internal bank report on me, the last sentence was, he'll probably be too embarrassed to go public that we've debanked him. Well, of course, they picked on the wrong bloke, couldn't they? And when I said I've been debanked, and I went to 10 other big-name banks, all of whom refused to give me an account, I must admit there was a feeling of fear. Because without a bank account, you can't function. It's as vital as electricity and water coming into your home. But the effect of me saying I'd been debanked was a bit like coming out, really. And suddenly, lots of other voices popped up of people who'd suffered the same humiliation. And we learned that the banks were debanking people in whole sectors, whole industries, anyone involved with the gun trade, anyone involved with the shooting club, anyone involved with oil or gas exploration, even people working in the sector were finding themselves refused, finding themselves debanked. Anyone that spoke out against DEI or any of the other absolute lunacies that seem to have gripped our public and private sectors were being debanked. And digital ID would allow people to do that on a much, much bigger scale. So it's got to be fought. It's got to be fought. But ultimately, back to where I started, the governor confirmed that central bank digital currencies are on the agenda. And that, I think, would be the ultimate authoritarian nightmare, literally for every single one of us. And digital ID from Starmer is a step in that direction. It having been confirmed to me that it's still on the agenda, and we have to stop this stuff. What we're talking about in this room is the very opposite of all of those things. It's about us having individual personal sovereignty, individual control over our lives and over our money, and that's why I find it so appealing.
How likely do you think what is the likelihood of a CBDC happening? And every once in a while, I'll see these papers coming out of the ECB, and it's why Bitcoin is still risky and why a CBDC would be much safer.
Yeah.
So talk to us about the view on the ground. How likely is this?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the European Union would love a CBDC, and Starmer, of course, would much rather we were still in the European Union. We're not, mercifully. They will continue work on CBDCs, but if we can defeat digital ID, then I think that will slow the whole process in its tracks. And if and when we win the next election, we will automatically shut down the CBDC project, make all those working on it say, very sorry, chaps, you're out of work. We will stop it overnight. If we don't succeed, and if he does get digital ID through, how far away are we? We're still probably 5 years away, 4 or 5 years away, but they're actively working on it. It's got to be stopped.
So let's say we wave a magic wand and you are the next prime minister of the UK. This will be something I can tell the old grandkids get to do that. What would you do? What would you already have an actual bill that you're working on, or a draft, right?
So we've got the digital assets and crypto bill. That's ready to go. We've got our Britannia card to welcome back the non-doms who fled. Aren't they awful? They're rich. Actually, these people invest huge amounts of money in Britain and create loads of jobs. Equally, we've got to get back the young 30-something entrepreneurs. But as with everything, the complexity of politics is that one thing doesn't work on its own because it's conjoined with other things. And we won't get a flood back to London until we deal with law and order. No one wears, there's probably quite a few of you here not from London, if you want to go out tonight in Mayfair or Chelsea, don't wear a watch or don't wear jewellery. I can't even believe I'm saying that. 5 years ago, that would not have even been a conversation, but suddenly it is. So part of getting the wealth creators and entrepreneurs back is changing policing. Sort of a Rudy Giuliani-style policing for London, I think, is very badly needed. And the other point about this industry, and if we extend out to data centers, AI, and crypto itself, of course, the one thing that it absolutely needs is lots and lots of dependable, affordable energy. But of course, we now have the highest industrial energy prices in the world. On bad days, we're actually importing up to 25% of our electricity from Norway, from Belgium, from the Netherlands, because we've taken ourselves down a subsidy route, a net zero route. We've turned our backs on all the resources we still have in this country. So again, we can send all the signals to this industry by passing that bill, but equally, we have to create the other conditions to make it work properly. And that's why it is complex. It's why you can't just wave a magic wand and make everything fantastic overnight. But what you can do to an industry is to say, this is the direction we're going in. And how interesting. Whilst the Financial Times laughs at me, and no doubt will condemn this conference, And whilst the Bank of England's been trying to pretend this world's not happening, despite all of that and all the negativity in the press, 1 in 4 under 30s in Britain already owns a digital asset of some kind, and 1 in 7 of the entire population already owns crypto in some form. So despite everything, it's happening in this country anyway. Really interesting.
It's fascinating. I told you this anecdote backstage, but there is someone who works at a big bulge bracket in the United States, and they do a poll to their incoming analysts about what commercial bank account do you use, and only in the last couple of years has the most popular category been other, because they don't have Bank of America, JP Morgan, or anything like that.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, how much of an age kind of demographic I think sometimes the young people have adopted crypto a little bit quicker than our older counterparts.
Oh, look, that's natural. I mean, you know, to a lot of people over 40 or 50, they are never going to have a digital wallet.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen. It's not their world. If they want to get involved in this space, have exposure to this space, well, I guess that explains why Michael Saylor, you know, and the Bitcoin treasury concept has done so well, because you just buy and sell a share, and I guess that'll come to London as well, because I can't see ETFs coming to London anytime soon, which is madness. I mean, the US exchange ETFs hit 100 billion more quickly than any other ETF that has ever been launched. So, you know, yeah, there is an age, clearly there is a big, big age gap, but there are other ways that older people who are not so tech savvy can get involved.
You know, part of the reason why we've been doing this conference in London for so long is London is a historic financial hub. And as you rightly point out, it has a long history of innovation when it comes to financial products, financial services, et cetera. And, you know, what I've been hearing a little bit so far in this conference is that we're worried that the UK might miss the boat when it comes to financial assets.
Well, that's what I said to the governor the other week. We're being left behind. Come on, let's get with it. You know, it obviously gingered him up a little bit because we got what we got on stable coins. But yeah, you know, I mean, equally, the equity market's being crushed. The IPOs are falling off a cliff. As I mentioned already, much of our reinsurance business have now relocated to the Bahamas and elsewhere, and we're falling rapidly behind. And in the 80s, of course, you know, the big bang of the mid-late 80s, and that's worth mentioning, because today is the 100th anniversary of the birth of Margaret Thatcher, and love her or not, she broke up the old city of London. You know, we got massive foreign investment coming in, and we really made London the world's leading centre. That was I mean, big bang. If ever you want to have a look at the example of sensible deregulation, getting rid of ridiculous market practices and customs, leading to success, big bang in London in the 80s is one of them. And so what we're going to need is Big Bang 2, with this space being right at the epicenter of what we want to try and do.
And Nigel, for those who have less experience in Parliament and government than you, it seems like there's a natural process for building up regulation, especially in financial markets. Yeah. Boom happens, bust happens, we need to put in place regulation to make sure that that never happens again. And then you end up over the years with this kind of patchwork, very over-regulated market, and it's hard to pinpoint that that's the problem. How do we go the other way? What is the process, even just from a social level, of how do we get some of this regulation out of the market?
Yeah, well, classic of politicians was Gordon Brown, who was our Chancellor for many years and regrettably our Prime Minister for a couple as well. He's the man that sold 50% of our gold reserves at $275 an ounce. What a genius. Whilst at the same time putting in place massive changes in financial regulation, and declaring no more boom and bust, it's all over. After thousands of years of human civilization, through regulation, I've guaranteed no more boom and bust. And these are the kind of cretins, I'm afraid, that have been running us for too long. And, you know, we do need a marketplace. People can trade product where they trust the marketplace, will not run away, will not steal their cash. All right? We need that. Every market needs. You know, well, when this was a fish market, as it was until about 40 years ago, Well, this was a fish market. There were some basic rules about what traders had to do. Very basic rules. Thereafter, free enterprise, price competitiveness, quality were all the things that the people who came into this market to buy fish chose. And it's exactly the same with financial products. At the minute, we've got it all wrong. So it's going to take, and I can tell you this, it isn't just me in reform that's been in business. You know, Richard Tice has been in property development for many, many years. Zia Youssef is a very prominent front figure for the party. Well, he's been a tech entrepreneur who's done very, very well. We are, you know, of course we've got people from other sectors, but we have a lot of men and women in senior positions in reform who've actually lived and worked in the real world of business. And we understand all economies will have good times and bad times. It's natural. That's never going to change. But let's just make sure there's a reasonable, sensible level of regs so that we can do the right thing. And by the way, talking of the gold that Brown sold, we've currently got about £5 billion worth of seized Bitcoin. And she's planning to sell all of that. And what I'm urging is, no, let's keep it, let's have the Bank of England, and let's start to build up and make Bitcoin a reserve category as well.
So, you know, we're taking a lot of shots here at some of the incumbents, which I think rightly so. But if
they take shots at me every day. Don't worry about that. It's just a chance to get my own back.
Well, here's a question that I've always had thought, you know, on the maybe a challenge of your job is your job is to represent your constituents. Well, your constituents might work in some of the industries that are going to get disrupted here. I mean, one thing that I will say for the banks, you know, the banks don't like crypto. Yeah, no shit. We said we're going to disrupt the banks. Down with the banks. So how do you manage representing your incumbents who may be disrupted here versus the innovation in
Look,
markets?
all change has winners and losers. It's called life. It's called life. And if you have a system that is outdated, is not working, is in the case of the banks and debanking prejudicing, I mean, there are still hundreds of thousands of bank accounts closed in this country every single year. We have excessive anti-money laundering rules that mean if a bank sees an unusual payment, it just closes you down. All this to stop money laundering. Yet every high street in Britain now has a proliferation of Turkish barbers where they don't cut any hair, they only take cash, and there's a brand new Lamborghini parked out the back. I mean, you know, the AML regs are a sledgehammer to Mr. Nut, and for every 100 quid we're spending, on regulation to seek money laundering, we're only getting £1 back the other way. So, yes, our financial services industry in this country needs disrupting. And there will be some losers, but there'll be a lot more winners.
All right, so we've got about 2 more minutes here, and I want to close down actually on this word sovereignty that we talked about. That's a critical word for anyone that's been involved in this industry, and I think, you know, while there are financial reasons to work in this industry, that's probably what tugs at people's heartstrings the most. And it's interesting to be speaking to you here in the UK because there have been a couple of, this is going to sound not related to crypto, but recent laws around hate speech and what you're allowed to say online and some of that policing. And I would love you to just connect, you know, what's going on with there to the importance of having financial freedom specifically. Help me connect these two ideas.
Yeah, I mean, we've had the Online Safety Act, which I mentioned not so long ago. So you have to be 18 or over to access a lot of content. No, not that sort of content. What an audience. But even news content. Some of it you have to be aged over 18 to access. And of course, the first hack has happened already, as it was bound to do. We have two-tier justice, where certain sections of the country, because of their religion, are given more space and more freedom than the rest of it. Two-tier justice, two-tier policing, two-tier care has made a lot of people in Britain very, very angry. There's a sense, particularly from America, I think, that free speech in Britain really is under assault. I think it is too. We've got to fight back against that. But back to the point, or finish on the point of sovereignty, I campaigned for a quarter of a century for national sovereignty against the unelected, globalist, and in my view, appalling institutions of the European Union. And we've won that battle. We've got back our sovereignty. We haven't used it very well, but we got it back. This campaign, and the reason I'm sitting here this morning talking to all of you, this is about individual sovereignty. This is about governments not controlling us. It's about banks not closing us down. It's about crypto being allowed back in from the cold. I mean, you transfer money every month from your bank account into crypto, they will close your account down. That's what's been happening in this country. Individual sovereignty is the freedom to be in control of and do what you want with your own money, to make your own life decisions. And this is part of my next big battle, which is to fight to win the next election in this country and to turn everything round by 180 degrees.
Nigel, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. Very good indeed. Thank you very much. Very, very good. Not enough time.
Thank you for attending this morning's programming. Please enjoy lunch in our networking area. Our afternoon programming will resume at 1:30 p.m. Thank you.
is the most affordable tenure. We've committed to the biggest boost to social and affordable housing in a generation, and we're backing councils and housing associations to build at scale. So communities like his in East Worthing and Shoreham get the homes that they need, but at costs that people can afford to pay.
Thank you
very much, Mr. Speaker. There are over 560 families on Gosport Borough Council's waiting list for social housing, and yet despite taking power a few years ago, over that time the Liberal Democrat Council have not built a single extra council house. Meanwhile, the complaints that I get in my mailbag about the substandard quality of council accommodation get more and more every single week. So I ask the Secretary of State, what's he doing to encourage really inadequate councils like this to build more quantity but also better quality of council accommodation?
She will be aware that the government has now reintroduced home building targets that were scrapped by the previous government. I think it's very important that we have those, and those are set up at a level which is achievable. Councils will be held to account to achieve that. I'm currently working on an acceleration package to encourage more building. Local authorities will be key partners in that. We'll make announcements on that due course, and of course she will be aware of changes that we're making to drive up standards in council housing and other social housing that we will insist is enforced and carried through.
Minister Guthrie.
Mr. Speaker, it falls to me to open the bowling from the opposition front bench. So can I congratulate the right honourable gentleman on his appointment and welcome him to his place today. Mr. Speaker, the previous government awarded the Mayor of London almost £9 billion of funding to build a total of 151,000 affordable homes in London. The second tranche of this money amounted to £4 billion, which was to build 35,000 homes between 2021 and 2026. To date, only 997 have been completed, and 443 of these were acquisitions rather than newly built homes. What plans does the Secretary of State have to hold the Mayor of London to account for this lamentable failure?
Well, first of all, I thank him for his kind words. But I think really it is disingenuous to blame the Mayor of London for failings that were the fault of the previous Conservative government and current Conservative boroughs in London like Bromley, who are a shocking 95% behind their house building target. We can't tolerate that. Now, the previous government choked off house building everywhere by scrapping house building targets. They crashed the economy and sent mortgages through the roof so that people couldn't afford to buy new ones. The Shadow Secretary of State, of course, a major cheerleader for the Prime Minister at the time who carried that through. And housing consents in the last 4 years collapsed by 1/5. It is this government that will take the steps to remediate that situation. It is this government that is going to get 1.5 million new homes built. It is this government that is going to work with local government partners across the whole country, including here in London, to make sure that the homes this country needs are built.
Mr. Speaker, the whole House will have heard that the Secretary of State has no plans to intervene on the Mayor of London. But under Section 340 of the GLA Act 1999, the Secretary of State does have the power to direct the Mayor of London to require him to review and revise specific policies of the London Plan if they are seen as hindering housing delivery. There are a whole plethora of policies, including an obsession with dual facing, twin staircasing, and a bizarre aversion to corridors, Mr. Speaker. Developers are united in saying that these are massively hindering development in the country's largest city, which has the highest demand for affordable housing. Mr. Speaker, the Secretary of State is holding all of the cards, including the purse strings. Why won't he intervene?
Well, first of all, can I say I do recognise the challenges that he's outlined. They should concern all of us, and I thank him for raising these. He will be aware that we're making legislative changes right now with the Planning and Infrastructure Bill going through to speed up the planning system, which is holding back so many homes from being built. And we will be putting down further amendments to that to tackle some of the challenges that he is talking about. I am working with the Greater London Authority and the Mayor of London on an acceleration package, particularly targeting London, and we will make announcements on that within weeks so that he will see the action that we intend to take here in the capital city to ensure that home building continues at pace here, but we'll also be looking nationally because every region of the country needs these new homes built to meet people's dreams of somewhere affordable to rent or to buy.
Gideon Amos, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2007, Min Campbell launched Liberal Democrats' campaign not just for affordable but for decent homes for our military. In congratulating the Secretary of State on his position, will he join me in congratulating the Forces families who backed my amendment to provide them with a decent home standard? And will he agree with me that they deserve nothing less?
And first, can I thank him for his kind words as well? And I agree with him. The changes that have been made, and we've managed to come to consensus on this, are very important, and they will make a big difference to forces, families, and veterans. And we all want to see that. And I congratulate and commend him for working cross-party on us to ensure we get an outcome that will be very satisfactory to everybody who's concerned about this issue in the way that he is.
Dunlop.
Question number 2, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My department does not hold data on the proportion of people that have been granted asylum status and who are living in the private rented sector in England.
Mr. Speaker, well, it's extraordinary the Minister doesn't have that answer. Too many asylum seekers are arriving in our communities far too fast because this government has failed in its promise to smash the gangs. People have had enough, and this Labour government doesn't seem to have any answers. What actions will the Minister take to support local communities and public services to deal with the growing number of asylum seekers in our communities?
But I'm afraid, Mr. Speaker, I'll take no lectures from the honourable gentleman. It was the previous Conservative government, in which he served as a minister, that lost control of our borders and presided over the complete breakdown of the asylum system. This government is restoring order to that system, speeding up decision-making, reforming the appeals process, cutting the asylum backlog and removing those with no right to be here at a much faster rate than the previous government did. Mr. Speaker, our country has a proud history of providing sanctuary to those fleeing persecution. Genuine asylum seekers, granted refugee or humanitarian protection status, should be welcomed. He would have said the same some years ago, and it's a sign, I'm afraid, of just how far his party have fallen that he cannot now bring himself to do so.
Minister Denson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's clear, despite that answer, that things are getting worse. Our councils are battling with the cost of this government's border failures. The 22% rise in small boat arrivals, combined now with Chagossians arriving in rising numbers, throwing themselves on the mercy of our local authorities as they escape Starmer's sellout, are stretching council housing budgets to breaking point. The government has refused to answer my written questions about what financial support it provides to councils housing asylum seekers and refugees that are granted asylum in their areas. So can he tell the House how much of the proposed rise in council tax is for the cost of the government's asylum failures? And will he publish the full costs and support in the interests of transparency?
I'm afraid, Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman is conflating two separate issues. Genuine asylum seekers who have been granted refugee status can stand on their own 2 feet, can work and will rent, in some cases in the private rented sector, in other cases market housing. Some dispersal accommodation for those seeking asylum will of course be in the private rented sector, and that can add pressure to local rental markets, but that's why decisions must be made in coordination with local authorities, taking into account local housing pressures, and more importantly, Mr. Speaker, why the reduction in hotel use needs to be proceeded in an ordered and managed way, not a chaotic way, in the way the party opposite have been calling for.
John Milne.
Question number 4, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the National Planning Policy Framework sets out that the purpose of the planning system is to contribute to the achievement of sustainable development, including the provision of supporting infrastructure in a sustainable manner. We made changes to the framework in December last year that will support the increased provision and modernisation of various types of public infrastructure. Local development plans should address needs and opportunities in relation to infrastructure and identify what infrastructure is required and how it can be funded and brought forward.
John Milne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In my constituency of Horsham, we've seen promises of new schools and clinics repeatedly broken. But in every case, it wasn't the developer or the local council who let people down. It was national bodies like the Department for Education and the ICBs. They do it to save money by cramming more kids into existing schools and more patients into packed clinics. So in the light of the 21,000 extra houses that have just been announced by the Chancellor for Horsham District, will the Minister agree to meet with me to discuss how we can legally ensure that key local infrastructure promises are indeed met?
The honourable gentleman knows I'm always happy to sit down and talk to him about these and other issues. I think it must be said, Mr. Speaker, that when preparing a local plan, planning practice guidance recommends that local planning authorities use available evidence of infrastructure requirements to prepare an infrastructure funding statement. Now, not in all cases the local authorities are doing this. That's why the Chief Planner wrote to all local planning authorities recently to remind them of their statutory duty to do so. But we can discuss that and other issues when I meet with him.
The Dixon.
Speaker, new housing developments agreed under the last government have been built on the green belt around villages in the Shipley constituency, such as Burley and Wharfdale, Willesden, Denham and Cullingworth, often without the vital investment in infrastructure such as GP practices, schools and other council services. So will the Minister reassure my constituents as we build the much needed affordable and social homes that we will prioritise brownfield and ensure adequate investment in the community?
I can give my honourable friend that assurance. Ours is a brownfield first policy. But her question highlights an important point, Mr. Speaker. The previous government released vast swathes of the Greenbelt in a haphazard and chaotic manner. We are taking a strategic approach to Greenbelt release, prioritising the release of the lowest quality grey belt, and we're assuring that where that happens, subject to our golden rules, that we see higher levels of affordable housing and infrastructure. It is a much smarter approach. The previous government didn't adopt it. They should stop carping about it now.
Question number 5, please.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, water companies are not statutory consultees on individual planning applications, but they are consulted as part of the preparation of local development plans. On the 26th of January, the government declared a moratorium on any new statutory consultees and announced a review of the existing statutory consultee arrangements. A consultation on proposals designed to limit the scope of StatCons to where advice is strictly necessary and remove entirely a limited number of them will be published in the near future.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Outdated sewer systems mix clean rainwater with sewage, polluting rivers and placing strains on outdated infrastructure. If the government is intent on not making water companies statutory consultees, then a national rainwater management strategy mandating rainwater harvesting on new homes and major renovations would ease the pressure on the infrastructure and reduce likelihoods of sewage overflow. So my question to the Minister is, what recent conversations has he had with the Minister, with the Secretary of State for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs about introducing a national rainwater management strategy? And will he consider making rainwater harvesting a mandatory requirement on new housing developments?
I thank the honourable gentleman for that question. He raises an apt point. Mr. Speaker, I regularly meet with colleagues from the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs to discuss a range of issues, including in relation to water efficiency and management. I draw the honourable gentleman's attention to the consultation we launched just last month to review the water efficiency standards within the Building Regulations 2010. As part of that, we are investigating how we can bring technologies such as rainwater harvesting into new developments safely.
Patrick Hurley.
Thank you, sir. Number 6, please.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, devolution to strong local leaders who understand the economic opportunities and challenges in their patch has clear economic benefits. It can drive higher productivity, boost local economies and put more money in people's pockets. Greater Manchester, for example, which is further along in its devolution journey, is one of the UK's fastest growing local economies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to see that the government is pressing ahead with its commitments to implement new strategic authorities. And so can I press the Minister to consider how these new strategic authorities can grow their local economies through providing support for things like community businesses and social enterprises in town centres, helping to regenerate and renovate the neglected high streets that we see across the country?
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is completely right to highlight this. There is a huge opportunity for strategic authorities to support community businesses, cooperatives and social enterprises in order to help regenerate and revitalise our town centres and build community wealth. We're already seeing this across the country. We see in Liverpool City region where significant investment is going into community businesses. We are keen to build on this opportunity and unlock this across the country.
Sir Julian Smith.
Speaker, devolution is starting off well in North Yorkshire, but North Yorkshire Council is really concerned about the upcoming local government settlement, which is obviously going to be challenging for all councils. But could I urge the Secretary of State in his new role to look carefully at the most rural county in England and the particular challenges that it has in delivering services?
Thank you to the Honourable Member. We are looking very closely at every area. We know that local government is going through the processes of both reorganisation at the same time as we're doing devolution. We're doing that at pace, but we're doing it in strong collaboration, working very closely with individual areas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We welcome devolution in London. The ability for local councils like mine in Wandsworth to tackle growth could be undermined by the changes proposed in the Fair Funding Review. 26% of residents and 33% of children live in poverty after housing costs in Wandsworth. Will the Minister consider making adjustments to the proposed funding formula to properly account for housing and for children's services and ensure that no council is worse off as a result of the review?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have consulted on the Fair Funding Review. My colleague is looking at proposals at the moment, and we will report back in due course.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Devolution can have huge benefits for local people. Using £20 million of funding from the last government, Stockton Borough Council have brought forward proposals to change Yarm High Street. But the council have completely failed to properly consult and work with local residents and businesses in developing these proposals. What could be an opportunity has become a nightmare. Does the Minister agree with me that such changes should be done with local residents and businesses and not forced upon them?
Mr. Speaker, 100%. Look, the opportunity around devolution is to put communities in the driving seat and to give communities genuine power. The Pride in Place programme, for example, that this government has launched, puts communities right at the centre of this, because we think that's how we ensure that communities come together to drive the change that they want to see in their areas. And we encourage all councils to work very closely with their local communities in order to make that change happen.
Ben Maguire.
Question number 7, please, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, the £39 billion Social and Affordable Homes programme will support a wide range of social and affordable housing, and that includes council housing, supported housing, community-led housing, and of course rural housing. The government will also consider how planning policy can better promote rural affordable housing through our work on national policies that will come for decision-making later in the year.
Ben Maguire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to the Minister for that response. Of the 4,400 homes, the ambitious target that Cornwall's been given every year, I sincerely hope a large proportion of those will be for the 25,000 Cornish families on the housing waiting list. I also meet so many constituents in social and private housing who have been left high and dry by dodgy developers. They go into liquidation before delivering vital infrastructure like roads and sewage works. Will the Minister please meet with me to discuss the enforcement tools local authorities need to properly hold these developers to account?
I certainly recognise the problem that he's describing, and it's an issue in North Cornwall, it's an issue right across the country, and that is why we are looking at how we can strengthen enforcement over the developer contribution, so that where those commitments are made, they are delivered, and we don't find local communities left stranded high and dry because the vital infrastructure that needs to support those homes never appears.
Bradley Thomas.
Number 8, Mr. Speaker.
Minister, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The government wants to see more empty homes brought back into use across the country. This includes taking steps, as we outlined in the English Devolution White Paper, to strengthen the ability of local authorities to take over the management of vacant residential premises.
Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the Minister to her new role. Will the government consider introducing a policy whereby long-term empty properties brought back into use as homes will count towards a district's housing target?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are a number of powers that local authorities have to deal with empty homes. The member raises an interesting point, which I will take away and consider with officials. Thank you.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. There are 46 long-term empty properties in the community of Park End in my constituency. Park End desperately needs regeneration, which is why I'm delighted that this government has awarded £20 million of Pride in Place funding to be used by the community for regeneration over the long term. Does the government commit to work with me to make sure that the local community sees the best of this funding for the long term?
Absolutely, Mr. Speaker, and it's really encouraging to see the way in which local communities are actually seizing the opportunities around Pride in Place funding and taking it forward to deal with an issue that affects every single council across the country. Thank you.
Gareth Thomas.
Number 9, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Government recognises that community-led housing delivers a wide range of benefits. We strengthened support for it in the revised MPPF published last year. In March, we announced a 10-year social finance investment to provide capital funding for community-led housing. And as part of the development of our long-term housing strategy, we are considering how the Government may further support the growth of the sector.
Well, Thomas.
Mr. Speaker, Redwood Housing Cooperative spans 5 floors of social housing in the iconic Oxo Tower on the south bank of the River Thames. Given that Redwood is run by its tenants, charges some of the lowest rents in central London and offers some of the best views, shouldn't every community have a Redwood?
I thank my honourable friend for that question. He's long championed cooperatives, and I recognise his commitment to expanding co-ops in London and across the country. And with that example, he draws our attention to the benefits they can provide. I can tell him that we are considering opportunities to bring forward legislation to establish a legal framework for a cooperative housing tenure. This would help formalise the rights and responsibilities both of the cooperatives and their tenants and make cooperative housing a more attractive option. I'm more than happy, as he will know, to discuss the matter further with him at a suitable opportunity in the near future.
Jess Brown-Fuller.
Mr. Speaker, in my Chichester constituency, a lack of available land drives high-density schemes in rural villages, which then lack the necessary infrastructure and quickly become unpopular locally. Community land trusts, such as the Westbourne Land Trust, gain local support and deliver affordable homes, which give communities a real stake in that development. So does the Minister agree that community buy-in is essential if this government is going to reach its target for building homes? And what steps are being taken to help community land trusts go from the planning phase to actually building those homes?
I thank the honourable lady for that question. She's outlined again another of the benefits of community land trusts, getting that local buy-in. The availability of land is an issue for CLTs. I've already set out some of the ways that we're supporting them through new investment, and also, as the Secretary of State referenced earlier, the new social and affordable housing programme will be designed with the flexibility necessary to support a greater diversity of social and affordable housing supply, including community-led housing.
Samantha Nibbler.
Question 10, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we recognise the excellent work being done by the Coalfields Regeneration Trust and remain committed to working with them. As my honourable friend will know, the current fiscal position remains challenging, and so it is in this context that we're considering funding requests.
Samantha Nibbler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Coalfield Regeneration Trust is asking for £50 million funding to support local initiatives to help deliver training courses and community cohesion down to ward level. I have spoken to them about supporting constituents of mine in Exfield communities in Swadlincote, about improving confidence for people on long-term benefits to help them build towards getting into paid work and of activities that support community cohesion. I recently visited Blooming Gardens and Landscapes in Church Gresley, who told me of their concern of the lack of interest in careers in gardening and horticulture. So I wonder what the Minister can do to help me help my constituents to have opportunities in gardening and horticulture and improve their local communities too.
Mr. Speaker, the Government remains committed to supporting ex-coalfield communities like the honourable members and tackling the decline and neglect we saw under the party opposite. It was this party that established the Coalfields Regeneration Trust in 1999, and we are committed to working with them to support our coalfield communities alongside our wider efforts to invest in communities that have been held back under the party opposite through our Trailblazer Pride in Place programme.
I'm absolutely intrigued how the Coalfield Regeneration have managed to make that part of Northern Ireland. Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Minister very much for the answer. The fact of the matter is there was coalfields in Northern Ireland. There has been an opportunity.
So the honourable gentleman is saying you've got coalfields in your constituency? Yeah, OK. I'm going to allow it, but please, we've got to really think whether it's relevant to your own constituency. Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's always relevant to those people in Northern Ireland who have the opportunity to take advantage of coalfields in the past. Can I ask the request, In relation to other parts of the United Kingdom, of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, where there has been in the past coalfields regeneration, and where in the past there's been people who've been involved in it, who have came from the mainlands back to Northern Ireland, to ensure that everyone gets equal opportunity of what this can bring forward. Can bring forward for England, bring it forward for Northern Ireland as well. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, look, we recognise that we need to support communities across the country who have been held back. We are working with the Northern Ireland office to make sure that there is support available for communities in order to develop their renewal, to regenerate, and to ensure that communities have the power to drive the change that they want to see.
Murray Glendon.
Number 11, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, sir, I will take questions number 11 and number 20 together. We inherited, as a government, a homelessness crisis. Record numbers in temporary accommodation and rough sleeping had doubled. That's why my predecessor got together the interministerial group on homelessness very quickly. They've met 4 times and have established the principles of the strategy, seeking full input across the government, and that strategy is on its way. But just last week, the government announced a further 84 million in this financial year to support people who are sleeping rough or who are homeless.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister's announcement is welcome, but last year in England and Wales, 18% of people found to be at risk or currently experiencing homelessness were aged just 16 to 24. This number is far too high. Will the Minister agree to meet with the YMCA and the Youth Homeless Chapter Collective to discuss the action needed to support young people and reduce homelessness for good?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I congratulate her on sharing those figures with the House, because even though it's quite hard to hear that, I think it's all important that we don't look away from this crisis, and I will, of course, meet with her and the charities she mentions.
Emily Darlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Minister may know, Milton Keynes used to be called Tent City. We were able to reduce the numbers of rough sleepers down to 16 when I was the deputy leader. The reason we were able to do that is because we understood that it was more than just a housing issue, it was a whole person issue. Absolutely. Is she willing to meet with me and the other officers of the APPG on rough sleeping, as well as backbench members who have experience in this area, while shaping and delivering the rough sleeping strategy?
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I am aware of her work and the work of Milton Keynes Council and others in the city to bring down rough sleeping, and it's that approach, that whole person approach, that we'll be taking in the homelessness strategy. And Mr. Speaker, I never knowingly avoid a meeting with an APPG, so I'm sure we'll get that arranged very shortly.
Graham Stewart.
Mr. Speaker, reducing youth homelessness relies upon an effective working housing market. And of course, the Right Honourable Member for North West Essex understands that. And that's why she has pledged that a future Conservative government would abolish stamp duty on primary residences. She's also said, Mr. Speaker, she'd be very happy for such ideas to be stolen and adopted by other parties. Such an introduction would reduce the cost of house buying in Beverley and Holderness by around £3,800, a real boost for young families trying to get on the housing ladder. So will the Minister make representations to the Secretary of State and indeed to the Chancellor to say adopt this policy and do it now?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The party of Liz Truss just doesn't learn, do they?